Welcome to Intuitive Human. Our mission is to normalize intuitive experiences for humanity. We're connecting with people just like you, excavating their highly impactful, view-shifting, intuitive experiences, diving deeply into what it actually feels like when you go beyond the veil. In this interview, Tauna Houghton shares a harrowing story about how she escaped a highly traumatic and life-changing event, all because she listened to her intuition. We hope you see your own reflection in these stories, empirically proving intuition really does exist, and in such a way so that you may discover your own intuitive human.
So I'm an Ayurvedic medicine practitioner, which is holistic medicine.
Okay.
And an emotional flow guide, which is I help people release old emotions from their emotional body, which helps free them up in their life, and then also helps often heal the physical body. A lot of the intuitive experiences I've had were just when I was like an admin assistant or selling houses.
Just living everyday life, right?
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, just to set the stage for what we're talking about here, I have this term, the acronym for a life-altering, view-shifting, intuitive experience. And so sometimes, because that's what I want us to focus on, because sometimes we'll have like a hint, you know, it feels like a whisper or like a drive-by. I call it a drive-by thing that happens. That's really as subtle as a fly flying by. It could be really, really subtle. And then also we have these like irrefutable, like no mistaking, something big just happened and woke up a piece of ourselves that you can't deny, usually is without words, really, to explain it exactly as it happened or something. And then also that basically like you were kind of going on this track, and when this thing happened, it had no choice but to send you down another path. And so that's the view shifting piece I'm talking about. And because it was so view shifting, like it's this whole other entry into another space, time, realm, universe, world, whatever you want to call it. But it kind of just flips everything on itself. And now you're walking through like, whoa, what the heck just happened? I'm a different being.
A long time ago, back in 1999.
Well, let's start. How old were you in 1999?
25.
Okay.
24. I was born in 1975. 24. Okay. Am I being paranoid and freaky?
Okay.
Or is this my intuition? So I'm with an ex-boyfriend. We had just had a challenging month in Nepal, and our plan was to fly. I have to look it up. I think it was Delhi.
Okay.
And we went to Traveling Sea. We bought our tickets. We were poor hippies going to ashrams. And then we went to out to get some dinner. And I just kept having this knowing and hearing this voice, return the tickets, return the tickets. And my heart's pounding. I'm sweating. And our plan was to leave in 3 days from then, which would have been Christmas Eve. And I was like, we can't leave Christmas Eve. And I ran out of the restaurant, didn't even let the food arrive.
Okay. And
ran back. The travel agency is closed. I'm like banging on the glass. I could see the woman in there. She wasn't going to open up. So we're waving some rupees to bribe her. And she opens up, lets us back in. And I'm like, we have to leave on a different day. We can't leave Christmas Eve. And we left the day early. And it cost us, I think, like $150 more, which for us was a lot of money. And then we left, we're going to leave 2 days earlier instead of 3, which meant we were going to be more rushed at the goodbyes and getting things done and getting out of the country. And my boyfriend he kind of knew I was intuitive, but he was really hesitant, like, oh, I know we should leave in 3 days and the money. But I just felt this incredible wave of peace wash over me. And I just relaxed and I was like, we're going to be okay. But I had no idea what had just happened.
Okay. So once you decided together that you wouldn't go on the trip, you're saying that's when the peace washed over you?
We got the travel agents to cancel those tickets and issue us new tickets to leave
I
a
see.
day early.
Okay.
So it was just like, up until then, it was just like
Right.
panic.
Right.
And then we're at the Kathmandu, Nepal airport, and I'm ballistic. I'm like yelling at everyone who works there. Why aren't you looking through our luggage? Why are you looking at our passports to make sure we're the right people? Why aren't you verifying this ticket matches with the passport matches with my face? Like, and you don't know me well, but you can probably imagine like that's not so normal.
Right.
And my boyfriend had, at that point, I think we counted at that point 37 airplanes together and like 20 airports. So he was just like, I normally bliss out at airports. It's like a meditation retreat for me. So he's like,
Oh,
he's
interesting.
starting to get really nervous and uncomfortable. And then when we go out to the tarmac, it's just the airplane with stairs, and people are coming from all over. People are crawling out of the forest and getting up the stairs and in. And like, they weren't being funneled in and having verified. They were, this was before terrorists. This was before 9/11.
Right.
Anything. And then we're on the airplane, and I'm like white knuckled. I made myself bleed from my fingernails. Breathing, I'm doing my mantras on my little like prayer beads, and I can't even think straight. Things are spinning. We have to get off the plane now. And I'm like starting to yell at the stewardesses, but no one speaks English, and I don't speak their language. And he's starting to get embarrassed. He's like, calm down. But at that point, the plane had taken off, and I was trapped on the plane. So I was just praying. I'm just calling on angels in white light and praying and praying. And I was saying all these things like, if we make it alive, I was making promises. We got to the Delhi airport, and I like went full prostration, face to the ground, was like kissing and weeping. And it's like the filthiest, grossest, right?
Right.
And I'm like, oh, we're alive. We made it alive. Oh my God. At this point, my boyfriend is just not sure like what happened.
Okay.
And all these people are looking at us, and I was just really embarrassed. We got a hotel room, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, maybe I'm premenstrual. I'm sorry. I was just so like, I'm a paranoid freak.
Hormones can do many things. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I never had anything like that. So I was like, well, maybe we avoided something and we'll just never know.
Right.
So the next morning we wake up, it's Christmas Eve, it's in the news. We were seeing all these protests happening in the street, people staring at TVs, people are sobbing. We go into a restaurant, some, expats come up to us and they're like, hey, Merry Christmas. Like, major bummer about flight, blah, blah, blah. The one we canceled and paid more, like bribed the travel agent to stay open, pay more money, leave a day early, had been hijacked by terrorists from the Taliban. They rerouted the plane to Afghanistan, and everyone was trapped on the tarmac for 9 days in their seat. They even killed someone. And it was apparently pretty awful, like, peeing in your seat and like desert heat during the day, freezing cold, guns. I guess the person they killed, they kept in the seat. So they were sitting there with a dead person the whole time.
Right.
I think it was someone's like newlywed husband or something had tried to stop them, the terrorists. And it was like, I remember just sobbing because for one hand, I managed to save us, but I didn't get clear enough. I mean, I was yelling I probably yelled at like 20 or 30 employees at the airport. They got to be more on top of their job.
Right.
And this was before security was tight, like it is here in America. So it was weird that I was doing that. Yeah, and so we just rented a hotel room with a TV, and we were just glued to the TV every day until they were freed. And we just kept looking at each other like, wow, that could be us.
Right.
We could be that guy. We could be, yeah.
Wow, that's really intense, no?
Yep, that's a pretty big one. And that really taught me to listen to my intuition.
Okay, so there's a lot in there that I want to kind of break down, and there's a precognition piece of knowing ahead of time before you change the ticket, before you started feeling panicky even about changing the ticket. Were there any kind of drive-by little whispers or anything like that you had noticed or can remember? If you can't remember, it's okay. But any Like if we're to go back to kind of that time and place, sensationally and all that kind of stuff. And before you change the tickets, knocking on the door, all that, did you have any kind of whispers of knowing that basically intensified so that you would act, and then, everything else fell after that? That's my first inquiry.
That's a good question. I hadn't really thought about that. But I'm getting a memory, so hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, I really actually wanted to leave the day early when we were talking about it and going to the travel agent and choosing. I really wanted to, and my boyfriend kept saying all the better reasons to leave on Christmas Eve. It's $150 cheaper. It gives us an extra day. It kind of all made sense. And I was really wanted to leave before that. And I didn't have a good reason. I was like, well, so then we don't have to travel on Christmas Eve. And he's like, yeah, but we have no one to spend it with there. I'm like, yeah, that's true.
If you slow down and go back into the feeling of panic, as you described it, the tougher part of these interviews is really slowing especially if it's a feeling of panic and urgency, like really nuancing those things out between what does knowing feel like. Is it a flash in your mind? Is it a picture? Is it just some kind of inner quiet confidence that doesn't even have any energetic push to it? Like what are these nuanced pieces of distinguishing, let me find the word, because I do feel like it's a distinguishing moment that makes you act, and I really want to get into the nuances of those things that make us act on these voices or these intuitive experiences. Will kind of be like, the word that came to mind was truths, like a distinguishable truth about a situation that then there's kind of no option but to.
Yeah.
Because when it becomes clear, then you move.
I mean, I've definitely had that calm, quiet knowing about something. And I heard a voice that I hear occasionally, androgynous, a little masculine, and I'll get a message in the right side in my head that'll be simple but calm, but with a lot of not force in a bad way, but more like I'm gonna just it's like the voice picks me up and moves me. It was like the hand of heaven just saying return the tickets. And you're like, okay.
Right. This is a non-negotiable, yeah?
Yeah, it's like, I got it.
It's
like not that. Threatening or controlling or aggressive. It's just like all of a sudden you're awake and you know what you have to do.
Okay.
And that felt a lot of love. A lot. I mean, even as I say now, I'm like, it brings tears to my eyes.
Yeah, totally.
That was really helped me know I am divinely guided. And then there was just this momentum. It was like I was being lifted out of my seat. I remember I was telling my ex, we got to return the tickets. It was like, I just kept standing up and getting down because I was felt like I had to wait for him, wait for the food because we were starving. And it was like something just kept lifting me up. And all I could think about was running to the travel agency. So I receive messages different ways. Rarely it's that voice, but usually as I get a picture that tells me, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. And then there will be a feeling in my body of this leaning towards something or being pushed away from it. Usually that pushed away feeling is when I'm not supposed to do something, will often be this heavy, dreadful, leapy feeling. And then the feeling I should take a leap is this usually a forward, bubbly, I might still be afraid, but excited and leaning forward, spring in my step. And this was just I'd been hit with electricity, an electric jolt. And it was just the voice and the picture of the travel agency, return the tickets, travel agency. It was all I could think about.
That's interesting. I kind of want to just inquire a little deeper about the levitation or the upliftingness, like it's moving you kind of thing. In some of my own experiences of highly intuitive moments, I also have experienced movement in particular ways, but if I drop my awareness down a few notches, for lack of a better way to describe it, and check my physical plane of existence, nothing's moving. But yet there is this experience of movement happening. I'm curious if in this case, for your own movement, that it felt like a lifting and a movement towards or whatever, and you had to remind yourself, no, like I have to wait for him. But in the movement itself, were you actually moving? If we slow that down, right, was the body just like propelled from an internal force or a divine force? Like, how would you, slowing that down?
I'm just going back in time, like wanting to jump out of the chair. It was definitely like an energetic upward movement happening. I wasn't like really being levitated. And I felt like I was getting little electric jolts that were causing me to stand up a little bit.
Okay.
But definitely it felt like the energy was directing me. I hadn't really felt like this energy was so strong, like I couldn't help but jump up. It felt like some higher presence was trying to get me to move up, to get out of the chair and out of the restaurant.
Cool. So then it sounds pretty definitive that it was more like an electrical experience, let's just say. The jolts or the impulse, like maybe impulse is a better word, because in our nervous system, we have the synapses and the electrical impulses already. And now would you describe it in this case that the impulse was to go? Like if nothing else, we just have like, wow, there was an internal go impulse that was, like kind of just pushing you along.
Yeah, it's like that same impulse where you see someone in physical danger, like maybe a child or a puppy, and without thinking, you just run.
An instinctual impulse.
Yeah.
Okay.
It felt like that.
We say intuitive, that's a common word for this, but the other word is instinct. It goes back to like our nature, which is also what we're talking about, is without all this overriding activity that happens in our daily modern lives now, we're really talking about going back and listening to our instinctive nature.
Yeah. And, I've had a lot of more intuitive things like, oh, I should do this, not do that. And that was definitely one of the really instinctual ones. Imminent danger.
And you just knew about that. And then intuitive human is really about bringing people back in touch with the messages by education of these experiences happens to everyday people. I'm a normal person. You're a normal person. And saying, wow, these things are real. They're impactful. They're life altering. Who knows what everything happened from your 24, 25-year-old self to now if you weren't on the planet anymore because you didn't respond to that instinct that you had. You kind of mentioned that it created more trust in yourself to believe in these things when they happen to you as an experiencer of it. How would you say that trust or anything else as the years progressed beyond that time, how has that experience impacted your life, but then also maybe the lives of either how you interact with the people closest to you? Maybe your boyfriend at that time was like, wow, she wasn't crazy, even though you looked like a freaking lunatic. Things like that. So just like the lasting impact on yourself and those close to you.
Even though I can be afraid, it still gave me a lot more sense of being divinely guided of like, if I'm meant to die or have an awful experience, I will. And if I'm not meant to, I just kind of felt like I had these angels around me that were just like, okay, move her left, move her right, make her duck. All right, put her in. Okay, like just. And I'm like la la la. Yeah, so it gave me a lot more inner peace that I really am divinely guided. That there really are beings out there to support me. That I am not necessarily meant to have harrowing experiences. So I have had a few. Like I went through something last year that was pretty harrowing, and I was like, well, I guess I was meant to go through this. And I heard the voice that was like, yeah, you needed it. Like,
Okay.
it sucked, but it helped me grow in a big way. It helped me own that I have intuition. I speak it more than I used to.
Okay.
And oftentimes I get insights with clients or friends or myself that have been really helpful for people.
And I think the track of learning when it's helpful and not is individualistic, because I feel like everybody's tracks are as they are. As long as you strengthen that muscle of listening, feeling, tuning in, attunement to others, all that stuff, you will find your way and you will learn your way. And that's what this is all about too, is, how do you do it? What does it even look like? And then once you kind of can feel it yourself, then you get to ask it what it means and listen deeply.
Yeah, and for me, it's been a lot of trial and error, where I'm like, I don't know if this is intuition or not. Well, I'm going to just take a step forward in that direction and see what happens. It's kind of like you said, where it'll get heightened. Because sometimes I'll be like, I'm not sure. So I'll start to take a step in that direction. It'll be like, no. I'm like, oh, okay.
Right.
Or all of a sudden everything just the doors start opening. You're like, oh, okay, or I'm starting to feel more relaxed, or like that level of discernment of when to share things or not. Is I'll ask for guidance. Like, should I share this? And I try to follow it, or I might get the guidance share just a little bit. Don't share what I really see. See how the person responds. And I never ever say it like, this is truth. I know what's more true for you than you do. So, I'm kind of intuitive. I have this impression, could be wrong. Do whatever you want. Do you want to hear it? And then I try to really lean back and not put any pressure on them, because sometimes I'm like, I don't care if you want to hear it or not. I'm going to tell you.
Okay, here's like maybe a final closing question. Would you say that intuition is available to anybody, or only to like special magical people specifically?
I think it's available to everyone. I can't tell you how many times I talk to people who don't think they're intuitive, who will share something that is actually very intuitive. They've either dismissed it as just some fantasy, or like they've been trained to ignore it for whatever reason. But yeah, I think everyone has intuitive abilities and gut instinct. It's interesting because I had a friend, another old boyfriend in the past, who was kind of envious of the energy that would come from my hands. When I caught up with him years later, he had said that he wanted it so much that every day for 2 years, he would just pray and pray, please let me have energy coming through my hands. And then all of a sudden, so much energy started coming through his hands. He had to be careful about who or what he touched.
Oh, wow.
Like, it would hurt people. He would shock them. He was breaking things. And then he had to go seek help. How do I manage this? What do I do? Like, it came through so strong. And he always considered himself as just like practical, logical, salt of the earth kind of a guy who doesn't feel energy or angels or anything at all. And now he's just like wide open.
Cool.
It might be helpful for anyone who's listening and longing to be able to feel more than they are.
Any other final thoughts or ideas or anything that you want to share as a closing to our time together here today?
These intuitive abilities are real.
Intuition is real. Instinct happens. Whether we like it or not, it happens. Right. We just have to pay attention and keep choosing.
If you want to talk to again, I have some other experiences too, and this was helpful and interesting for me. I'm excited for what you're doing. I think there's a lot of people who everyone has these abilities, but a lot of people are aware of it and want to understand how to trust it and listen to it more and amplify it. So It's important. I think it's what's going to save humanity.
Right? We gotta balance this craziness out a bit. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes, you're welcome. It was really fun to talk to you.